SB1062. Does it protect religious freedom, or does it give the green light to discriminate against gays?
Stop the hate!
It's only right that we would protect the rights of our pastors as well as our businesses.
In the next hour, how did we get here?
I think they have the right to choose who they want to serve to.
And what's at risk?
It might also discourage visitors from coming here.
Is Arizona a maverick state?
Shame on you!
It's the Great Divide. And tonight, we want you to take part in our ABC 15 community conversation.
Good evening, I'm Steve Irvin.
And I'm Katie Ramble. We are taking action. We have several community leaders here tonight to help walk us through this great divide.
But first, the latest developments on SB 1062. The bill has now been sent to the governor's desk, officially putting the fate of the bill in her hands.
But earlier, 3 Republican lawmakers sent this letter to the governor asking her to veto the bill. All 3 senators voted for the bill.
One of them, Mesa Republican Bob Worsley, even co-sponsored it. Earlier today, we caught up with another senator who voted for the bill and is now calling for Governor Brewer to veto it. Here's what Steve Pierce had to say about why he changed his mind.
There were a number of us that didn't like the bill, but we thought we would go along and vote for it and get it passed and keep the unity of the caucus together. And we just made a mistake and misjudgment.
Many of you asking how this became an issue in our state. It actually started with a court ruling in New Mexico. A gay couple suing a photography studio after the owner refused to shoot their commitment ceremony.
The photographer said working with the couple would have violated her Christian beliefs. The couple argued that decision violated a New Mexico state law denying public services to people based on race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. And the state Supreme Court agreed. Now, Arizona doesn't have a law that protects people based on sexual orientation.
But SB 1062 supporters say it's important to head off possible lawsuits here against people who make similar decisions based on their religious beliefs.
Okay, so here's a timeline of events for you surrounding SB 1062. It was first read in the Senate on January 14th. The Senate passed the bill on February 19th. The House passed it one day later. It was officially delivered to Governor Brewer's desk today. Now she has 5 days to either sign it or veto it. And by the way, if she does nothing, it automatically goes into law.
And we turn now to our first debate, focusing on whether there's really a need for this bill. We've invited a number of people, both for and against it, people who are players in the debate, certainly. And we want to start off with some questions, I guess, that are kind of basic legal questions here, maybe perhaps about whether we even need a law like this in Arizona. Paul Bender, ASU constitutional lawyer. There isn't a law in Arizona right now that necessarily protects people based on sexual orientation. So is there even a need for this particular law?
There are 3 cities. There are 3 cities in Arizona that have laws that protect people, but the state does not have a law. So in order to permit people to discriminate on the grounds of sexual orientation, you wouldn't need a law like this in Arizona, except perhaps in those 3 cities. And my understanding is those laws have been applied in a very mild way. And so there's no apparent problem right now that needs to be solved. Something happened in New Mexico, but they have a different law. Phoenix's law, for example, only applies to places of public accommodation. I don't think a photographer would be a place of public accommodation in Phoenix.
What about a business, for instance?
Depends on what the business is. The Phoenix ordinance applies to places of public accommodation and applies to employment, but it doesn't apply to every business. But the point is, in my view, you shouldn't pass a law like this unless there's a demonstrated need for it, and then the law should be tailored to serve that need. So unless there's something going on here that's oppressive to somebody's religion, I would think you shouldn't do this, because if there's no need, people will take this as being a license to discriminate, as being encouragement to discrimination.
So let's check in with Senator Al Melvin, because I know you do believe there is a need here in our state.
Yes, I look at this bill as a religious freedom bill. It's being warped out of, distorted into some sort of a discrimination bill, but I'm reminded of the words of Ronald Reagan when he said, freedom and liberty can be lost in a generation, including religious freedom, and this bill is to protect our religious freedom now and in the future. but you know, in the course of questions that I've heard today by some major networks, it's almost becoming a cottage industry of discrimination. For instance, I heard, well, how about discrimination against unwed mothers or divorced women?
So address that.
In all my life, I have never heard of those groups of our fellow Americans being discriminated against.
But do you acknowledge it is possible?
I would hope not. I guess, and that's what this is all about, to protect a fundamental right as an American, and that is our religious freedom. Nothing more and nothing less.
So no matter what group it is?
Yes.
State Senator Andrew Tovar, you obviously voted against this bill in the state Senate, and I think a lot of people, perhaps on the Democratic side, see this as somewhat of a slippery slope here, that you can dream up all sorts of scenarios.
Well, absolutely. Again, Arizona is in the headlines for the wrong reasons. Arizonans do not need this bill. Arizonans do not want this bill. Again, this is discrimination under the guise of religious freedom. You know, many Arizonans will find themselves unequally treated by this law. So again, Senator Melvin had said he knows no discrimination. Well, in my community in the state of Arizona that I've grown up in, there is much discrimination in regards to people's race, to how they dress, in regards to who they love. So again, this issue this bill actually is in search of a problem. And there's nothing to solve.
There are all kinds of scenarios that people have sort of presented that maybe aren't as quite as offensive as discriminating against gays and lesbians, for instance. You own a Jewish printing business, for instance, and somebody comes in and says, I want you to print up anti-Semitic literature. Is there anything for that owner to simply say, no, I'm not going to do that, that's offensive to me?
Well, here I believe in this bill, the burden is now on the victim. And this is something that is discriminatory in Arizona in regards to not only of who you love, but what religion you believe, what race. So essentially, there is a lot of it that is at stake here for the state of Arizona. We're coming off SB 1070 and the detrimental effects that has caused the state of Arizona, not only economic-wise, but the black eye that tarnished Arizona. We've worked too hard to move Arizona, and frankly, this bill moves Arizona backwards, and it turns back the clock decades in dealing with discrimination.
We're going to get to even more on that in just a minute, but Republican Chad Campbell, I know Democrats. Sorry about that.
Clarify that. Yes.
I know you're ready to jump in on a couple of these issues here. I'm going to hand you the microphone so that you were able to speak up about this. I know you're wanting to weigh in right away.
To Senator Melvin's point, with all due respect, he didn't answer your question. And the bottom line is, could you discriminate against a single mother? Yes, you could. Could you discriminate against an unwed mother? Yes, you could, because they are an unprotected class in the state of Arizona. And to Mr. Bender's point earlier, statewide, this may not have much impact, but in the 3 cities that have passed policies that protect the LGBT community, you're going to have this law supersede those cities' policies and open up discrimination in those cities for those residents. And we talked about this on the floor of the House, and we debated this last week. I asked all of the members that would take my questions in the debate, would you have supported that photographer in New Mexico if they had refused to actually take pictures of an interracial couple? Not a single Republican said that was okay. They all said, oh, no, we would never have supported a photographer who would have opposed an interracial couple. But if you turn it back to the original situation at hand, would you oppose that or support that photographer in terms of opposing a gay couple? Yes. Hands down, we support the photographer's ability to not take pictures of a gay couple. Let there be no doubt about what this is about. This is an attack on the gay community. And to the question earlier about whether or not this bill is needed, what this bill shows, I think, to an even greater extent, though, is the fact that we don't have equal rights for all people in Arizona.
Still.
That's the problem we have here, not this bill. The problem is we failed to actually extend rights to every person in the state. And if you're a gay couple in the state, if you're in the LGBT community, you do not have the same rights other people do, and that is simply unacceptable.
We have a lot more to get to.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks working to chime in here. We don't mean to cut anybody off, and we certainly don't mean to try to sway one side or the other. But right now, we're going to move on to the possible unintended economic consequences. Could SB 1062 have those for Arizona? We've already seen a lot of business groups weigh in on that. Our panel will take up that debate coming up.
This is a rally that has taken on a life of its own. I'm Stephanie Hawkers. We are live in the middle of it all on the Capitol grounds. We will see you just next.
And I'm Christopher Sine. This bill is only 2 pages long, but boys, it created a firestorm on social media. The hashtag to use, 1062AZ, already people weighing in. It is getting fired up. One person writing, because the Bible says that gluttony is a sin, are we going to see restaurants with signs refusing service to fat people? Another person responding, my question is, of the senators who have changed their minds, how many of them are up for re-election? Much more on this hot topic coming up.
Live coverage from ABC 15 continues with SB 1062, The Great Divide.